Good afternoon, good evening, and good night. This is, of course, the Screen Watching Podcast, your favorite, your mum's favorite podcast, dedicated to what's been happening on the screens of myself, Dan Barrett, and my co-host, my man of arms, Simon Foster. Folks, we've got a big week, and only because we saw the biggest movie of the year, as far as I guess critics are probably concerned, on the biggest screen possible for what was possible for Simon and I. We went and saw the Odyssey. Simon Foster. It was a big one.
Dionysius, yes, it was a big film. Hello, screen watchers around the world. It is a big week for movie. It's just a big movie. Yes.
Do you feel that you missed out on something by not being able to see it on 70mm IMAX, and instead you just had to see it on boring old bog standard IMAX?
Old giant IMAX down there at Darling Harbour. No, I have a friend who's actually travelling to Melbourne to watch it in the 70mm IMAX presentation. Just for the cinema experience of doing it. Well, good luck to him. I wish I could afford to do that and have enough interest in the film to do that. But no, I don't think I missed out on too much. As much as I am an advocate for all things 70mm, I was kind of happy the way I saw it.
An advocate for all things 70mm. That's what she said.
Don't quote me on that.
So look, I also would like to have seen the thing on 70mm. Like, you can go and see it at the Ritz Cinema in Sydney on 70mm.
Yeah,
okay, which is pretty good, but it's not on an IMAX size screen.
No, exactly. You're right.
Yeah.
So that's, and I mean, which raises the question: if the opportunity rose for us to watch it in that format, would we go and see it again? Is this a movie you could sit through twice?
Yeah.
Is it really?
I think so. It is. Well, let's talk about that as we do our review of the movie. But we've got some other stuff we're going to do as well. We're going to talk about The Hawk, which is the new Will Ferrell comedy over on Netflix. I've got a few other things we're going to chat about briefly. There's a new Apple TV show called Lucky. There's inexplicably a Ghost in the Machine reboot for 2026. Haven't we seen enough of the Ghost in the Machine? There's been countless adaptations, reboots, and sequel series, and all sorts of stuff. Does a new entry into the canon really sort of bring much to it? We'll discuss that. But look, we're really going to be talking about the Odyssey on this week's podcast. So strap yourselves in. It will be spoiler heavy. Is that true?
I think so. I think it'll be spoiler heavy. I think at this point, well, considering the story's been around for like whatever it is, 19 centuries or something, then I think we're okay with a spoiler.
That's right. So look,
indulgence.
This is Screen Watching, and we'll be talking about the Odyssey and all that other stuff in just a moment. And also, two things to note. One, it will be spoiler heavy. And two, because Simon and I are purists, this will be in the original Latin.
This is not like TV, only better.
Television! Teacher! Mother!
Secret lover. What, that's it? That's your movie?
Well, I said that I had an idea for a movie.
So, Simon, because we are talking about the Odyssey this week, I wanted to ask you a question before we throw in.
Yes, sir.
Christopher Nolan, I think it would be pretty safe to say that he is like the director of the, 21st century. Okay, I think he has well and truly taken the mantle from your Steven Spielbergs. My question to you is, one, is that too fanciful an idea? And part B to that is, if you've got an alternative, I'd like to hear it, because I think there's only one answer to it, and it is Nolan at this point. And two, what is your favorite Nolan? Oh, okay. And a final question, what's your least favorite Nolan?
Okay, let's go down this path. Well, I can tell you, least favorite Nolan of mine is Dunkirk. Most favorite Nolan of mine is probably Inception. Is he the director of the new millennium? I think his acceptance in that position, and I'm not going to argue with it, he is the most revered modern contemporary director of a certain age, speaking to a certain age group. That's he does exist in that sphere. What was the other part of the question?
Best Nolan, worst Nolan, is the Nolan?
Yeah, okay. He has certainly maneuvered for himself a position in the industry where every one of his films is an event film. And he deserves that place with works like Inception and Oppenheimer and certainly the Batman films. And I think the success and the work that he did on the Batman films has positioned him with a critical following that grants him some leeway with opinion that other filmmakers don't have. I don't think he is a perfect filmmaker. I would put Spielberg's first 10 films up against Nolan's last 10 films.
No, but we're not doing that. We're talking about what he's done in terms of this century. So would you put Spielberg's post-2000 output against Nolan's 2000 output?
I wouldn't, but if we're judging a filmmaker on their first 10 films, I think Spielberg has made more of an impression than Nolan does. But we're talking decades apart. We're talking two different
that's why I don't think
filmmakers.
it's a fair comparison. I think if we're talking about the era that both of them are actively working in, that's the comparison point.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, we're not. We're talking about, okay. But to my point, I'm not as comfortable with the esteemed status that Nolan has achieved as most other critics are. And I have storytelling issues with most of his films that I stand by, but he's certainly in the position of being the most revered filmmaker of the contemporary space. There you go.
Okay. Now, I'm going to offer my thoughts. I thought maybe you'd say, and Dan, what about your thoughts? And
no, I'm not interested, but give it a go. Yep.
Okay, here we go. So, I would tend to agree with you. I'm not entirely in the bag for Nolan. Okay, there's some of his films which I think are just outstandingly great movies. And then there's some which I did not care for in the slightest and get angry at the idea that I might ever have to watch them again.
Of like what? Which one?
Well, we'll talk about that in a moment. Is there a filmmaker that is, besting Nolan from the last 25 plus years? 25, I said plus because we're in 2026. From this century, is there a better filmmaker that's got the same sort of impact? Right. Better is obviously a, phrase, which we're not really quite talking about here. We're talking about, I guess, impact and that sort of, cultural appreciation, like that sort of mainstream sort of interest. And I think it'd be difficult to really argue there's anyone who sort of occupies that space more than Nolan. I would like to make a case for Denis Villeneuve personally, but he's certainly made films that I've loved more than Nolan's output.
I think in terms of distinctive output, certainly nowhere near the commercial success, but I think Wes Anderson is probably someone you can say, okay, I know a Wes Anderson film, and he has people who are as passionate about his works as
absolutely
as Nolan's followers.
But from a mainstream audience perspective, like Anderson's big in our worlds, but like I just don't know that he necessarily has that cut through. I don't think my mum could tell you who Wes Anderson is, but I think she could probably tell you Christopher Nolan.
Really? Your mum's a big Nolan fan?
No, I don't think she is. But I think she could tell you who he is. Or I don't think she could tell you who Wes Anderson is.
Okay. Yeah, no, for sure.
Best and worst Nolans. The best movie, and just because I'm a basic bitch, I can't get past this, okay? It's The Dark Knight. Like, to me, that is the best movie. Me, the person that wants to feel like he's a little bit edgier and has an actual real opinion, wants to say Tenet, which I love dearly, okay? I know that was not to many people's cup of tea, but I really, really like Tenet. Interstellar, I had the greatest movie experience in a cinema seeing like that film on the old IMAX screen in Sydney back in the day, okay? But have I watched it a second time since? Not too sure I have.
No,
I've never felt that compulsion. I'd say that's true for almost all of his films, except for Tenet and the Dark Knight films. I think two of his Dark Knight films are brilliant. There's one of them which is fine. Which one that final one is, it's up for you to decide. And then the worst one, Simon, is, and I can't even think of the name of it right now, The Prestige, which I just think was just a really piss weak film.
And yet is the film that so many Nolan fans say is...
They love it.
They love it. They absolutely
love
it.
it.
See, it was that early...
Like Electric Clone, Simon. Come on. It's too fanciful. It
was a big pivot. It was a big pivot, that. So there are those, and I'm amongst those that recall what a thrill it was to see Memento and then Insomnia. They were two films where I thought, wow, this is an amazing filmmaker going amazing places.
I remember where I was when I saw both of those movies, and yeah, they were like important cinema moments for me, both of them.
Yeah. And then I started to, and Dunkirk was the undoing for me because it absolutely felt like a filmmaker who is working with a whiteboard and a felt tip pen, and it was just moving pieces around without any feeling for the characters. And I don't think Dunkirk deserved that.
Hold on to that thought. In fact, let's explore that thought in just a moment in some greater depth. So what I like about Christopher Nolan, okay, and it's the thing that is clearly one of his defining trademarks as a filmmaker, is that I don't think he's big on emotion. I don't think that he's really particularly great at human beings. But what I think he's really good at is structure and playing around with timelines and how that fits into a structure. These are two things that I really love. I really love movies and TV shows that will play around with that timeline and sort of muck around with that. He seems to be doing it a bit more in terms of trying to find the sort of emotional through line to connect that disjointed structure to where the emotions of the characters are. And I think that's just him paving over the fact that I don't think he's actually good with human beings. Okay, but he's got a couple of structural things that he leans on repeatedly, which brings us to the Odyssey, because while I thought the Odyssey was a really great piece of cinema, there were some things with it that stopped me from really loving it. Part of that is what I want to talk to you about on the Odyssey. So can we play a clip?
Let's play a clip. In 173 minutes, thereabouts, Christopher Nolan gives us his version of the Odyssey, the story of Odysseus, who is played surprisingly well. And I say surprising because I wasn't sure he was the right man for the job by one Matt Damon. It's very sturdy casting. He has been taken away from his home in Ithaca, where his wife Penelope, played by Anne Hathaway, and his very loyal son Telemachus, played by Tom Holland, hashtag the weakest link, as they try to wait for his return. And all the while, there's all these men trying to be suitors for Penelope, and out front of them is Robert Pattinson really chewing the scenery in a very enjoyable sort of way. As a character who's thoroughly despicable but desperate to tie his ambitions to Queen Penelope. Meanwhile, Odysseus is way off in the distance, trying to deal with a lotus addiction fed to him by Charlize Theron, and having visions of what he thinks is the goddess Athena, played by Zendaya, which begins his journey back to his homeland and protection of his wife and young son. To me, this is a movie of two very distinct halves. There's the mythological journey that Odysseus undertakes, where we meet the Cyclops and the giants, the army of giants, and that thing with the tentacles that comes out of the concrete walls as they try to navigate the oceans, and which I thought was some of the worst special effects I've seen in a long time. And also,
I went out with her at one point, by the way.
I bet you did. The most bizarre detour was when they meet Samantha Morton's man-hating witch, and she does things to the crew, Odysseus' crew, that are quite bizarre and very hard to explain without giving away too much. I don't want to spoil that scene for many, but it's one of the strangest moments, certainly the oddest moment in a Christopher Nolan film, and that's really saying something. And then you get his return to the homeland, where he indulges in huge battles. This is a thunderous film. The sound design, the soundtrack, the sound edits are just extraordinary. The way they clash and clank and scream at you on screen, which kind of made me feel like he was maybe covering up the lack of depth in what the film was trying to get across. But in the end, the human elements of this, and it's funny how you said before that it was his dealing with human emotions that didn't quite work. I actually felt this came together quite well when the family was reunited, and I'm not, like I said, we were going to have spoilers here, but you know the story. So that was interesting to me. For half the film, I wasn't that engaged. For the second half of the film, I kind of was.
It's really funny. We are people of two halves because it was the second half of the film that didn't work for me, whereas I really loved that first half. So where I found myself getting into some choppy waters with Nolan is exactly where I always find myself in choppy waters with Nolan, which is I think that when he's forced to confront actual human beings, coming up with human being perspective and do more with people than just delivering a fairly rote narrative, I think that's when he tends to overwrite. And he's got a couple of tricks that he regularly employs. And part of it is narration over the top of the screen to do the cardinal sin of screenwriting, which is say it, don't show it. And so if you think about my beloved Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises, both of them end with some fairly on-the-nose dialogue work, coming through. And I found that in abundance in that final, we'll say final third, which is really an hour of screen time because, boy, he makes a long movie.
Yes, he does.
Not over 3 hours, though, which was merciful, but also it's IMAX, so he can't go over 3 hours. But I just found that last bit where we really got to the core as to what Odysseus has really been thinking and really sort of grappling with for the previous 2 hours of the film, he just kind of says it all on screen. And so that I just think is really bad screenwriting, but he never gets called on it. And that kind of frustrates me a little bit. But
he dives deep into it.
This is the challenge I had with it. So there was so much I liked about the final third. I really liked the perspective that he brought into it. I thought it was a really interesting shift in tone and idea and perspective. But at the same time, like it just felt like Michael Caine was reading narration over the top.
Yeah, look, for me, I found Odysseus such a surly, unlikable sort of character. He had to have some kind of redemption to make the film work for me. And I think that when he realized that his wife was still alive and he had a home that he could return to and a son that was remaining loyal to him, Nolan is working in some very conventional frameworks here, like in a very conventional themes. He's just talking about decency and family, and this is all we need to work towards to make a better society. And it's when people like the Robert Pattinson character work against that all this comes crumbling down. He kind of had the same message in Oppenheimer to a certain extent. Oppenheimer was this wildly ambitious, brilliant brain who kept disconnecting from his human side and from his family, and it was only coming back to that and seeing the.
It felt like he was telling the Christopher Nolan story.
A little bit like that, yeah. So,
well, see, I think
this
that these
film
themes
took on
though,
meaning
Simon,
for me. This film took on meaning for me when Odysseus's real journey was about family, and it was fun, but it wasn't even great filmmaking, those opening scenes, and I thought the Cyclops scene just went on too long.
I love the Cyclops. I was really into it.
Oh, boy. Okay. Well, yeah, look, and
you say, oh boy, but like we've had this conversation once already, which was straight after we came out of the cinema.
Yes,
and
yeah.
Your lovely wife was completely on my side with this one, loving that sequence, and you were the Odyssey.
Yeah, look, maybe
in
so.
Darling Harbour that night.
So what? It's just a. I'd seen that, and I said going in, it only has to be as good as Harry Hamlin's Clash of the Titans, and I'll be happy with this film. And it was just as good
like
as that
so
in
many
those
movies.
scenes. Yeah, exactly right.
It really does set the bar.
And it really, and that's what that opening scene was. It was just this journey through special effects, and that's fine. He does that better than most. He at the moment he's doing it better than Spielberg, so that's a plus. But I found I was actually bored in the first half of the film, and was glad when it took on some more human meaning in the second half of the film.
But I mean, maybe this is just that thing that I'm talking about, though, which is that he sort of saved the explaining what the character's really been thinking for that final act of the movie, which, you know, as much as I enjoyed the episodic adventuring of watching Odysseus and co, you know, taking their jaunty boat trip around the place, while I enjoyed that, like, it just means that we're stuck with this sort of final third, which is say it, don't show it, which is a huge problem for me. Getting to the themes of it, though, it's interesting. I think this is the most sort of politically aware and current that any Nolan film has been really to date. I don't think that his previous films have really been all that political, but it's really hard to not look at the sort of crumbling of a society, okay, with his lead coming and saying, look, what are we all doing here? We're behaving terribly and we're only doing it in self-interest, without considering the fact that he's made this predominantly for an American market. And if you look at what's happening there, like, it just feels very much, it is a commentary on where politics have been at for like the last,
And it's interesting because
obviously the last like 10, 15 years, but, certainly, probably go back a few decades on that.
and I've mentioned this before, and I can't even remember what film it was or TV show it was we were reviewing, but I said, is it just because we're living in this time where there is so much volatility and so much division and so much bipartisanship and immorality in how the world is ruled that we're reading this into these films? And the more I thought about it, the more
isn't that how you read a text though? You read a text from a film or a book or comic or whatever based on the time period in which it was published. Like,
through the
all
lens
written work, all art is a comment in one way or another on the society that the art is originated in.
Absolutely right. And in that regard, I think the Odyssey is very timely, despite it being one of the oldest texts ever written. And I do think that it has significant heft as a commentary on society, the current society. So that's an important thing for Nolan to have achieved, because as you said, apart from Oppenheimer, which I did read some contemporary politics into and contemporary society issues into, he doesn't do that a whole lot. So anyway, look, I think it's certainly a massive achievement. Seeing the wooden horse being dragged across the beach and knowing this was all filmed in using life-size practical effects and
I really like
a craftsmanship that I think is really important.
Let's talk about the horse. Let's do that. I liked that the Nolan version of the horse wasn't up there on wheels being wheeled up to the front of a castle. I like that the gambit that Odysseus and co were playing was that, hey, we'll leave this horse somewhere nearby and make them actually go to the effort of dragging this heavy-ass horse all the way into their kingdom before we actually go and attack it. I thought that was really cool because it was a different sort of consideration of the horse. Which, when we were all going in, everyone was joking about, the big effing horse is coming soon. And, everyone was using that as the focal point of their way into it. But then he actually approached this from a way which, I don't think many people have really considered through all sorts of adaptations of Homer.
Favorite scene in the movie for me, and a performance that I think was great. Elliot Page, coming back to life and speaking on behalf of the dead army, and the speech that she gave to Odysseus, they gave to Odysseus, I thought was just fantastic. I thought it was a great scene. I thought the dead army scene was the best thing in the movie.
It was fine. To me, that just kind of seemed like a plot device more than something which kind of felt really integral to the overall piece. But, that's all fine. A couple of things, casting. John Leguizamo, I spent so long trying to figure out who it was on screen that I was looking at. I
thought they resurrected Brando. He looked like a young Brando. Yeah, which was amazing, and he was great. He gave the film a lot of heft as well.
Fantastic, but so if you're wondering who that guy is, it's Leguizamo. I spent so long trying to figure that out, and then when I clicked it, I always did but I held it in. It was, quite profound for me. And you talked about liking the casting of Damon. I'm still not sure about it. I don't have a problem with Matt Damon, just generally. I quite like Matt Damon as a presence in most things. I don't know that he was necessarily the best Odysseus. He was fine. I don't have any complaints. No real notes. But the person that I kept on thinking would probably have just been better in it. And I absolutely know why he wasn't. Okay, but it kind of felt like it was a Brad Pitt role.
He did that. He's done that already.
No, but this is it. This is why he can't do it. It was on Troy, which was a film that Nolan...
He's too old now.
No, but this is an old character, Simon. Think about this. He's like a grown-up son at this point. Okay, and he's supposed to be like a, battle-hardened guy that's been gone for decades. That's Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt as much as when Brad Pitt takes off his shirt in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and, everyone is hitting, their jaws are hitting the ground going, my gosh, look at this man. Like, he's a guy in his 60s, whereas Matt Damon just feels just a bit younger still. Like, it doesn't matter how much gray he's got in his beard. I didn't quite buy that he was the age that I think he's supposed to be in this, but Brad Pitt absolutely was. As I discovered through the press tour of the Odyssey, apparently Christopher Nolan was originally on board to direct Troy, and then that never ended up sort of working out. So he'd done a lot of time spent thinking about crafting like a, adjacent, part of the story. And obviously, I don't think he'd be interested in hiring Brad Pitt purely because that was associated with that. But like, it was a Brad Pitt role.
Apart from the obvious technical achievements of this film, are we going to still be talking about the Odyssey come awards season? Is this another Oppenheimer for him, or is it not that important?
I think it's a bigger crowd pleaser.
What?
Really? Than Oppenheimer.
Oh no, God no! I don't think this is going to do anywhere near the dollars that Oppenheimer did.
It'll make more. It'll make more money.
That was a lightning in a bottle thing with the whole, It'll make more money than Oppenheimer, you reckon?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm willing to take that bet. I don't think it will.
Okay. Well, let's put your money on the table here, Mr. Foster.
Sure. Well, I'll bet your house. Yes. No, I don't. I think how it's going to. It'll open huge, of course, and the IMAX dollars and the IMAX tickets will, like the premium format tickets will absolutely help that as they did Oppenheimer. Whether it'll kick on into the hundreds of millions of dollars, I have serious doubts.
I think it's absolutely going to get into it's going to surpass Oppenheimer in terms of box office. But I'm talking about more in terms of, is it going to attract those Academy members at the end? And I think it's just a more blatant crowd pleasing movie than a fairly I don't know. How do you even describe Oppenheimer? Like, it's hard to talk about it being a quiet movie about a man grappling with the, consequences of what he's done, considering the scale and scope that Nolan brought what would be otherwise a fairly sort of small, lo-fi kind of a story. Like, he really brought a lot of bombast to it. But I just kind of feel like this is a film which brings like old school Hollywood onto the big screen in a way that we just haven't seen in quite some time. Like, you talked about the practical effects. You talk there's so much that this film has going for it that Hollywood, when it looks at itself, it wants to say, we make these movies, and it just doesn't anymore. But this is absolutely a throwback to old school Hollywood.
Old school Hollywood is back. I know you said afterwards that it needed more minions.
I mean, I say that about a lot of things nowadays, just generally in life.
All right, so the Odyssey is everywhere it can be as of this week. We will be watching the box office very closely. It's already getting huge results through the critical formats, the Rotten Tomatoes and the IMDb's, and both the critics and the audiences that have seen it are loving it. So we'll see if it reaches any great heights. What else do you want to talk about, Dan Barrett?
Look, let's really briefly have a talk about The Hawk, which is streaming now on Netflix.
Lonnie Hawkins, you had a chance at completing the Grand Slam a long time ago. What will be going through your mind when you tee off tomorrow?
I want my baby back, baby back, baby back, baby back. Chili's, baby back ribs, barbecue sauce. Can you repeat the question?
Simon, have you watched The Hawk yet?
I have not.
No, here's the thing, Simon. You have seen The Hawk.
Have I really?
You have seen The Hawk countless times on your screen. You saw The Hawk when it was called Happy Gilmore. You saw The Hawk when it was called Happy Gilmore 2. You saw The Hawk when it was called Stick, streaming on Apple TV just a year or so ago. You saw The Hawk when it was Caddyshack or Caddyshack 2 and even a bit of it in Holy Moly. But you know what's different about all those things ahead of The Hawk?
What, Dan?
Some of those elicited a chuckle.
The
Hawk.
Really?
I have not found myself with more time for quiet introspection than I have while watching a comedy than I found with The Hawk.
My goodness, really? See, that's interesting because it's got one Will Ferrell out front. He's usually good for a guffaw or two, a titter.
I think he can be good.
Yes.
He's got the runs on the board, so it's not like I'm going to come out here and say, oh, Will Ferrell, sometimes he's all right, but sometimes, like, come on. He's appeared in a lot of, like, absolute bona fide classics.
Sure.
And sorry, we should have dropped the word bona fide in when we were talking about the Odyssey, but that's maybe a side
That's your
thing.
Latin. Yeah.
Well, it's probably more a where art thou sort of a thing.
Oh,
But
okay.
you don't remember bona fide in that?
No,
He's bona fide.
I've only seen Oh Brother one time, and it was on the big screen up at the Swift Festival up in Coffs Harbour.
And
a
you
live
think
band.
you're qualified to talk about movies?
I don't
see.
really think I am anymore.
Yeah. So this here, we've seen it all before. Like, this is the story of this is basically Will Ferrell plays a golfer who's past his prime that's still trying to hold on to former glories. And so he comes back to try to show the, current guard, like, how to play golf. Like, we've seen this in every single golf movie. Like, this is the golf movie template, like, just on screen again. So the question you have to ask is, what is this bringing to the form that we haven't seen before? And absolutely nothing. It isn't jokes, because the jokes aren't really there in this one. And it's
Has
weird.
he
Like,
surrounded
actually,
himself with his usual crew? Has it got Carell or Paul Rudd, or is it an Adam McKay joint? Is he sort of have the people around him that he normally does?
Okay. Well, clearly, Simon, you need to pay attention to what's happening around in the world of film, because him and McKay haven't been on, like, working terms for quite some time now.
Oh, really? I did not know that. Are they having a Seth Rogen, James Franco moment, are they?
Well, their company ended up, what was it? It was Gary Sanchez Productions. They brought that to a close about 5 or 6 years ago.
Oh, my goodness me.
Yeah. So there was a sort of imprint label that existed as part of Gary Sanchez called Gloria Sanchez. And so that's now Will Ferrell's production company. But there's not a Gary to be seen in sight. There's no Adam McKay's in sight. And I think that's part of the problem, because I really feel that Ferrell's at his best when he's working with Adam McKay, just generally. But also, I feel that Adam McKay's working at his best when he's with Will Ferrell. And I haven't been all that into a lot of the McKay output from the last couple of years, and especially not the Will Ferrell. There was a moment in 2017, Simon, where Will Ferrell starred in, I think, maybe the worst American comedy film of the last... When did cinema begin?
About 1897 in France, but in the early 1900s in America.
The House. Do you remember that really just terrible...
With Amy Poehler, yeah.
Yeah. It's just god-awful. And that was the last gasp of one of those, hey, let's get some funny people in with, like, a loose script and improvise a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah. And that film does not work at all. And I honestly believe this hand on heart, The House is what killed the American comedy in the cinemas.
Big call.
You know it's true. So Will Ferrell, bit of hit and miss. And in this one, it's just all miss. He's still got, like, that Will Ferrell charisma. It's hard to, like, deny that. But, like, the material was just not there in this one. And when I was reading up about the production of this one, apparently he was working on it for a while with Rami Youssef, who was supposed to be co-starring opposite with him. And I don't know what version of that would have been at the time, but I'd be really excited to see that. I think Rami Youssef is genuinely a very funny person who brings a lot of real vitality and interesting sort of creativity to it. But he and his partner, Josh Rabinowitz, the two of them left it over creative differences. And I'm really curious to know what those differences are, because I feel they want us to make something funny, and Will Ferrell clearly wasn't in the same mindset.
The sports comedy is making a little bit of a comeback. I know that...
I saw a very similar film last year called Happy Gilmore 2.
Happy Gilmore 2, but there's also one called The Dink coming up on Apple TV with, what's that guy's name? Jake Johansson and the Aussie comedian Aaron Chen, and that which I think is a tennis-based...
Jake Johnson. Jake Johansson was Elaine's boyfriend in Seinfeld with the glasses.
And I think there is... And that's a tennis-based one, so... I mean, that's not a bad thing, I guess. I'm a fan of his, and Aaron Chen seems to be making inroads around the world with his comedy, so that might be worth having a look at. But it's tough to pull off. You can on one hand, you can count the really great sports comedies.
I guess the problem that I had with The Hawk, ultimately, was that I just kept on looking at it going, well, why have they made this movie? Like, at no point did anyone think, hey, this isn't really working. Because it's just...
baby.
It's just not working, and it just kind of feels like one of these productions where it's like, well, we can get Will Ferrell, he's excited to do this, and just through his sheer will of momentum, this came to exist, but it didn't need to, and it was just a very frustrating experience.
I'm going to move very quickly on to a little Apple TV series called Lucky. This is what else I've been watching this week. It's a a new series starring one Anya Taylor-Joy and a great support cast. You've got Clifton Collins in there as a mean dude, and Annette Bening as the head of a sort of crime syndicate that is coming after Anya Taylor-Joy's character, who is the aforementioned Lucky. It starts off with this whirlwind sort of Las Vegas sequence where she's being chased out of first a casino and then the town itself before she flees on a bus, finds herself running between trucks and then stuck in a car boot. It is a cracking first hour of a series. I must admit I was on board. And while I have seen some of this before, this is very much a modern crime desert noir sort of film. It is a great vehicle for her. She's terrific in the lead part, and it's great to see Annette Bening playing that mean sort of edgy character that she did so well in Grifters all those years ago. So it is on the Apple TV and it has a beautiful look to it too. It has this muted color palette, which looks really stunning.
Now, I've seen this as well. I was going to talk about this week, but I just couldn't find anything nice to say about it. But instead, I chose the Hawks to talk about. Really, where are my priorities? Exactly. This one here, look, I won't disagree that I think that there was a pacey opening in Las Vegas, but I think the word cracking is very generous. To me, this felt just... The Emmy Awards are coming up soon, and so we saw for the last couple of months platforms like Apple TV throwing their absolute best at the screen. And so for about 2 or 3 months, there was just great show after great show being launched on there. We're now out of that Emmy eligibility period, and so now we're just seeing a whole bunch of other things being dropped in. I look at Lucky as a show where they're making us thinking, hey, look, I think we've got something here. And then as they were sort of really working out what are our opportunities to actually, drive audience enthusiasm and what aren't, I think they just looked at Lucky and said, you know what, noble effort, but let's just pop it over into mid-June. And so when I looked at that, I just saw this was noble effort. You've got a really great star in Anya Taylor-Joy. I think that's undeniable. And I think there are all the elements here where it should work. It just didn't for me. I just found it incredibly flat. It was, I saw what they were trying to do and it just doesn't execute. I
totally contend with the issue that it's flat. I thought it had a cracking pace, like right through the fleeing of the casino was the other thing that I'm surprised a bit by reaction is
so many times and done so many times better than this.
Well, I don't know. Not on TV. Not
just
with TV
tonally.
Content.
It just wasn't quite there.
It's a Jonathan Tropper joint, who's one of the who's the creator of the Your Friends and Neighbours show, your mate John Hamm. So
this is the thing. Like, if you're talking about Jonathan Tropper, go and see previous shows he's made, like Banshee. Like, that's a show which really has like proper energy to it and really just comes off the screen in a really compelling way. This felt like Banshee light. Actually, that's not even quite right. Banshee has some pretty grimy characters in this, where this didn't feel anywhere near as grimy.
He does road movies, and he does like long journey stories pretty well. He did The Wrecking Crew, which was the Jason Momoa thing last year, which was a real surprise to me. I can't believe how much I enjoyed it. He can find characters in fairly sort of standard genre beats that I think we disagree on with this one, but I think he does really well in Lucky. So yeah, I'm on board. I've only watched the one episode, so I'm keen to see where this goes.
Yeah.
What else have
Simon
you been
Foster.
doing?
Last thing is, I don't really understand why this exists. And based on the fact that I've heard no one else talk about it exist, I'm not even sure I really actually saw this. Like, it's just one of these cultural things where it's like,
you dreamt it? Do you think you dreamt it?
Maybe I dreamt it. It could well be, but in my mind, there is a brand new adaptation of Ghost.
You're still on your meds? You're still taking what you need to take every day?
Periodically.
Oh.
I believe that during the week, I watched a new adaptation of Ghost in the Machine on Prime Video. Now, we've seen this from the the anime classic from the early 90s.
And it is a classic, yeah. Even someone who's not really into anime, as you like telling everybody, I really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed it.
Well, I only tell people that you're not really into anime because you don't watch it or ever talk about it or ever consider it.
I consider it, just not in a podcast form.
Rightio. So, we've got this thing. It's a reboot of Ghost in the Machine. So, from that original anime, there have been sequel series, which there was one on Netflix a few years ago called Ghost in the Machine SAC 2042 or something. I don't know. SAC was an acronym, but it made me laugh calling it SAC. You've got that. There was the Scarlett
child.
Johansson live action film from a couple of years ago, which was kind of fine, but I had no attachment to the source material. So,
None whatsoever.
it didn't bother me that it was Scarlett Johansson in the main role. But this is very much taking things back to what if the original movie, but 8 episodes long. And I don't know, I watched the first episode and I was perfectly entertained. But again, I have no connection to like the source material. So there might be some purists who watch it going, oh my God, I can't believe they made that choice. But as someone who was very new to Ghost in the Machine, just broadly, pretty fun. Give it a look. I don't think it's particularly special, and the only reason why people would probably want to check it out is because it's Ghost in the Machine, and they're familiar with it as a property.
Is it doesn't change the anime style? It keeps with the traditional sort of animation stylings of the period in which it came out in, or is they've
No, I mean
zazzed
it's a modern anime. Like it looks like it's been produced in 2026.
Nice.
From what I saw, it didn't look like they were really reinventing the wheel on anything. I talked last week in the show about Sparks of Tomorrow, which really had some really creative uses of animation through it. This, I didn't really see the same on
It's a lot
display.
of cartoons for a grown man, I've got to say.
I think you'll find it's Anime Simon. It's
Anime.
cartoons for grown-ups.
Which is a French word, isn't it? It doesn't have the little thing above the E that makes it a French word, not a Japanese word, which is where it came from.
Simon Foster, if people want to find you elsewhere on the internet, how do they do that?
Go to Screen Space, the newsletter I publish on the Substack, and you can forward all your complaints to me via the communication devices there. Dan, I know you do other things, but you keep telling me about them. Where are they?
Just generally walking the earth and offering my opinions where needed. But I do that digitally as well at alwaysbewatching.com. It's a newsletter that comes out 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. It's got all the news and information you might need to know about what's happening in the world of streaming, as well as a few hot takes that nobody's ever really asked for. And then also on Fridays, I drop out a weekly TV guide to all the new things that have debuted on streaming that week.
In my newsletter this week, I do a fairly lengthy sort of summation of the great Sam Neill, who we lost early this week. So Vale Sam Neill, the man who was everywhere with the Jurassic Park series, of course, but also did a whole lot of amazing things in between. He left us far too young. See you, Sam.
Indeed, folks, this has been the Screen Watching podcast. I got the name right this week, which is...
That's a nice change. It's only been 5 years. I'm glad.
Yeah, no, exactly. This has been Screen Watching. My name's Dan Barrett, joined by Simon Foster. We'll be back next week with... Is there a big movie next week?
No, everything's cleared the path. I was doing the template for my newsletter next week, and I'm just picking up stuff from all over the globe to talk about because there's nothing in cinema. So I'll make something up.
Yeah, no, I'm sure we'll come up with something.
I'll review Harry Hamlin in Clash of the Titans.
Can we?
Will.
I'm not necessarily entirely against that.
Okay.
It could just be a Hamlin pod.
Yes, let's do that.
No.
He did Making Love with Michael Keane, which was one of the early sort of gay-themed films out of Hollywood. And you could do your whole LA Law thing, couldn't you?
No, I could talk about that. I could talk about his role in Mad Men. It's all sorts of stuff.
Join us next week for the Harry Hamlin podcast.
Harry Hamlin pod. Yeah, baby. Folks, we'll be back next week with HamPod. See you then.